And for more on this, we're now being joined by Daniel Levy, who is the president of the U.S. Middle East Project and also has been the former senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister's office, including the Justice Minister as well, and is joining us live from London. Daniel Levy, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon. Your thoughts on on America pushing for this temporary truce up to 6 weeks? Blinken is back in West Asia. How much of this do you think is possible given the different scenarios, and Netanyahu himself, who has been pushing for the Rafah offensive to go through?
Well, as you know, this, of course, has been something discussed for months now. Because if people cast their mind back, you may well remember the images of a successful mediated ceasefire that was brief, only lasted several days, in which a significant number, 100 plus hostages, were released from Gaza. This was in late November. Here we are. It's May in a couple of days. And so the talks have really gotten nowhere. And why is that? And I think that's a question that's crucial because it may help us understand the prospects for this latest phase. And I think where we got stuck is this another temporary pause after which there will be further destruction, mass killing of Palestinians in Gaza, or is this an on-ramp to a full ceasefire, to a permanent ceasefire? And it's breaking that question that I think is the major challenge. There are other issues, no doubt. What will be the deployment of the Israeli military during the release phase? What will be the situation with humanitarian aid being able to get in? Israel has prevented most of the much needed, desperately needed aid getting in. What Palestinian prisoners? There are tens of thousands of Palestinians now held in Israeli jails, many detention without trial. The American position, and you just told us it again, is that this will be a temporary pause, not a permanent ceasefire. And I think unless we can see something that tells us this war will end, we may well remain stuck.
Right. You're right, Daniel Levy, that it's 200 days plus and we're still, at status quo and there's only widespread devastation. But there are a few things that have changed for both Netanyahu and for Biden. Domestically, there are a lot of protests, whether you see it in U.S. campuses or you see it on the ground in Israel. There's also increasing international pressure on the moral obligation of America to push its ally in West Asia.
So with your permission, let's maybe deconstruct the things that you just raised. Let's start with what's going on domestically in Israel. There has been an intensification of the protests on the ground. Real anger. It's led by members of the families of those being held hostage, but it goes much deeper. It brings in those who were opposed to the rule and the coalition of Prime Minister Netanyahu even before October 7th, where there were mass protests, so-called pro-democracy protests. Many, perhaps the majority of the remaining hostages are probably no longer alive, and many have been killed during Israel's military actions. These people are desperate. However, and this is crucial, what you don't see is political pressure on Netanyahu. In fact, the public and certainly the political class still back the continuation of the war. There is confusion over what should be prioritized, hostages or war. And Netanyahu has tried to say there's no clash there. Of course, there is a clash there. That's one thing. Then there's the American domestic situation. These scenes that, for a generation or more, we haven't seen on American campuses. It's spreading nationwide from coast to coast. Incredibly aggressive police action in response. We've seen professors being grappled to the ground, heads smashed against concrete. This is not about a hostage release. That may be part of it. This is a much bigger question of America being the essential, indispensable enabler of the destruction, the killing, the genocide case now before the International Court of Justice of Israel in its actions against the Palestinians, because throughout these 200 plus days, American weapons have continued in a conveyor belt to Israel. And without those, not defensive, but offensive weapons, this could not continue. So that's domestic pressure on Biden, but Biden thus far has not really responded to that pressure. The third vector you mentioned is the international pressure. America being isolated largely in the UN, America looking to most people in the world like a country that really only cares about international law and the rule of law and the international so-called rules-based order when it's convenient, but ignoring it when America is the one providing the aggressor, the violating party with weapons. None of those things, though, and let's be clear, none of those things have led to America actually putting pressure on Israel. There's no yet American push that says, if you don't stop doing this, we will stop the weapons. And that's been conspicuously absent. Yeah, true. Daniel Levy, thanks very much indeed for joining us with the very latest on your thoughts. And clearly the double speak there from the United States. They're still funding that war and then also airdropping, humanitarian aid. So Biden needs to take a clear position there on that. Daniel Levy, a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much. Thank you. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.